Hey, Brian.
Hey.
Hello, hello. Happy to be here with everyone on YouTube. Thanks for watching the video, either live or after, if you come back and watch this later. And while you're here, be sure to click the subscribe button on YouTube. We super appreciate that. And maybe crush that bell so you get notified, as they say, amongst all the cool kids. Speaking of cool kids, let's do this, Brian.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to Python Bytes, where we deliver Python news and headlines directly to your earbuds. This is episode 458, recorded November 17th, 2025. I'm Michael Kennedy.
And I'm Brian Hawken.
And this episode is brought to you by us, all the things that we're doing. We have many fun and useful things to offer you. PyTest books, PyTest courses, Talk Python training courses, the Agentic AI programming course about how you take agentic AI and turn it from like weird wizardry smushiness into engineering is going incredibly well. So check that course out. Follow us on the socials, pythonbytes.fm/live if you want to see this live or streaming live or see the old shows. And be sure to sign up to our newsletter. We have tons of people are really getting a lot of value of that. Brian's putting that out, and yeah, it's really nice. It's not just the links to the show notes, but it's extra deep information, background information, that kind of stuff. And the joke, always the joke, Brian.
Always the joke. And we put a link to the joke if we can find a link to the joke in the newsletter as well.
So exactly. Sometimes the joke has a link, and sometimes it's just like a dad programming joke, and it just has words. What do you want to talk about first?
I actually want to talk about Django. So,
oh, really? Okay.
And actually, kind of lightweight. I want to talk about the Django website. I guess I heard about this, but there was a discussion about maybe redesigning the Django website. It's been like the same for a while, and it works. It's good, but there is I noticed Adam Hill put out a mock-up for what the Django website might look like. So here's his new one, and I'm kind of liking it. I like the animated thing at the top. It's the task framework. It's the web framework.
Did Django just jump like 20 years into the future? From where it was to the current day. Was what I mean.
It looks pretty good. It's got like search documentation at the top that's really easy to find. I mean, I guess there was. There's no. I don't know where you have to. The search documentation isn't at the top here. I like the search there. I'm liking it. I like the just the life of it. Feels good. I think that maybe we should go with it. But it's just my vote. But that you can join the discussion too if you'd like to help out, and there is some assistance that Adam Hill is okay with. So there's and it's not just him. I'm putting a link to a discussion where he announced what his little his demo. He said, "I'd love help with in the form of PRs to the repo, explicitly not looking for drive-by critical feedback without PRs." That's fine. I guess here's my drive-by feedback. I like it. I know that's not really feedback, but I do like it. And but you can read. Looks like he kind of picked this up off of other. There was other work. Just a reminder that this doc informed my approach. So there's another document about things. I didn't look at it actually, but the discussion's been going on for a while. If I scroll to the top, there's been a discussion on. How do you do this? Up to September 21st. Oh, it looks like he started it. That maybe we ought to redesign the website. It's not too long, man. September 21st to now, but I think that it'd be cool to give. Why not? Let's go for it.
You know what? I think. Look, Django's a web framework. It should not look like it's 15 years old and outdated and rusty. I mean, it's a project that's getting tons of love and attention, and I think it's a really good idea to make it feel like it belongs at the cutting edge of web development these days. And just that website is aged fine, but it's like a long time, right?
Yeah, it is a long time, but also even if it should be to make it feel alive, also the website could be it could change also. Not that, I mean, even if this one doesn't, I mean, maybe this is great and this will be great for the new one will be great for a long time, but I think that we should be tweaking it on a regular basis just to make sure people understand that it's still moving. So
Yeah, absolutely. And hat tip to Adam Hill. That is a very nice looking website.
yeah, I think
I like it.
it's neat. Plus, I
Yeah.
love that. I gotta say, I love the documentation at the top, the search the docs, because that's, I often just go there because I'm used to going to a project homepage to search the docs. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. Very cool.
all right. What you got?
Oh, I want to dive into some concurrent database stuff. So I want to talk about AIO SQLite pool. So there's three concepts here: async IO, SQLite, and then a connection pool type of thing. So normally you just work with SQLite and it just says, hey, let's go open up all the infrastructure to talk to the SQLite database and do your work. And then it closes it, then it opens it, then it closes it, then it opens it. And that's not necessarily the fastest way to do that. Maybe you could just leave it open.
Oh, yeah.
Right, but you don't want to leak these connections or have a whole insane ton of them open. So instead, the idea is to use this connection pool. So you say, instead of give me a connection, you say, give me a connection from the pool, right? And it'll keep a certain number of them open and hand them over to you when it needs, or wait. If there's already 10 connections running queries, you probably can just better off to wait and just to try to hit it with another. So that's what this is. And it's not a replacement. Maybe people have heard of AIO SQLite. AIO SQLite is a way to talk async and await, but to SQLite. And all this is a little bit funky and interesting because SQLite is a file that runs in process. You know, it's stored as a file and it's a thing that runs in your Python process. So you're not going out to the network and waiting and that kind of thing, right? But this AIO SQLite gives you a async programming model. But the way it works is you create a connection, do a query, and then when you do async with, when that with block, that context manager closes, the connection's gone, right? So over and over, it's kind of up and down, right? And so the idea is this AIO SQLite pool wraps this SQLite library for basically three core problems. One, it tries to eliminate connection overhead by avoid like repeatedly opening and closing, you know, syscalls, mem allocation, teardowns, all that kind of stuff, right? Which I already described. It also has the advantage of potentially faster queries via hot cache. So long-lived connections keep SQLite's in-memory page cache hot, right? Like, so once a database has seen a query, it has to look at the query and say, okay, we're going to come up with a query plan. Do we use this index? Are there any indexes? How are we going to sort it? Is it a table scan? There's all these things, right? And that has to be determined for a query. So it could be like kept around and reused better, potentially, and maximize the connection throughput. So there's a bunch of stuff in here and some examples and so on. Again, similar programming model with connection with async with, but you get a connection from the pool. Somewhere down here, though, there are some stats, I do believe. Yes, the very, very bottom. Let's see. Here. It says just doing 100,000 complex read operations across 20 workers with a reasonable-ish database setup, 5 million comments, 10 million likes, 100,000 posts, and so on. Like real data, not just like, there's 3 items, query them. Which one is which one's bigger than one? Anyway, with all that, it says, what's your throughput? Without the pool, you get 3,000 operations a second. With it, you get 6,000. Basically, for all the metrics you care about, it's like a 2x improvement, almost. Not quite, but almost. So like throughput's almost double. The latency's almost half, more than half, better than that. So on, right? So instead of 60 milliseconds, it's 20 milliseconds response time, that kind of thing. So why not, if this is easy to use?
So you're going to, like, maybe I'm dense, but I can use this and I can have multiple async or multiple parts of my process accessing the same file at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, SQLite supports concurrent access. And especially if you're reading, there's no problem reading the file in parallel,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, anyway, if you're doing SQLite stuff and you're doing async stuff, check this out. There may also be a SQLite pool that is not async. I have no idea. I haven't looked at that. But
Okay.
once you get to the point where, like, I'm worried about concurrent speed access to my database, you know what? You're probably already in async land anyway. So here you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes, you're dense, and I'm going to answer you anyway. So, but no, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Over to you.
Okay. I am I'd like to talk about dependencies a little bit. Last week, I think it was last week, we talked about UV tree, or pip dep tree and UV pip tree, and those are great things. A similar, this sounds similar, but it's not. I'm going to talk about Deptry, Deptry, and I'm pretty sure this was recommended by somebody, but I couldn't find the reference. So I'm sorry for losing your name, but thanks to everybody for suggesting topics. So Deptry is Deptry, and what it does is it's a command line tool to check for issues with dependencies in a Python project, such as unused or missing dependencies. So the idea is like, so I appreciate the unused part. The missing dependencies I'm probably going to catch and test, but maybe you don't have thorough tests. So if you're importing something and it doesn't show up in your requirements file or your Python project.toml, it'll flag that. And the reverse is true too. So if you have a dependency listed, but maybe you refactored your code, and you're not using that dependency anymore, it'd be nice to find out that you don't need it. So that's pretty much what it does. But I really and it's pretty easy. You install it in your project, and then you run it, and it scans everything, and lets you know if, hey, you've got for instance, NumPy is imported, but you didn't declare it as a dependency. And it does have this idea of development in dependencies versus project dependencies, and that's the part that tripped me up a little bit. That's the switch. It's either development dependency uh, or a project dependency, and it's it's unfortunately like super easy to get started and really easy to get tripped up by it. And I got tripped up um because I use optional dependencies for tests often. So I'll do something uh list test as an in my project toml. I'll say project optional dependency for test. I've got PyTest and all my PyTest plugins, and then maybe docs for all of my like make docs or something to build the documentation. Pretty standard. But what Deptry does is it finds these optional dependencies and just includes them in your normal dependencies, because it might be your CLI or your GUI, which interesting. I guess I don't get why your GUI or your CLI would be optional, but maybe you have two choices.
I,
Whatever.
I don't like it either, but I think I've seen it like I want to install this and only have the CLI, or I want to install this and I do also want to have the GUI, and the GUI install might be super heavyweight. You know what I mean? It's just a way to say I want less instead of like the union of all possible use cases.
Actually, oh, cool. I wonder if I can work this as in test suites, because there's times where I want some. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent, but I think this would be fun to play with test suites.
Yeah.
Why I'm going down this rabbit hole is because the most common thing of in the usage and configuration, it's like buried in here. But if I look for PyTest, I'm gonna have to look for it a couple times, I guess. Here we go. So optional dependencies, test of PyTest, you have to list it out as, you have to add this big pip dep tree or tool.dep tree, and then pep 621 dev dependency groups. This is kind of verbose, guys, but that's what you got to do. And if you do that, it all works fine, because I just like tried this out on a simple project, and it said you've included PyTest, but you don't import it anywhere. No, I don't import it anywhere. I'm using it for my test.
Do you understand what this is for?
So I'm a little thrown that I think maybe I'll suggest that their example of using that the dev dependency groups are at the very least test and docs, and I think that should be the default. I don't think you should have to declare that. If you've got a tests or docs, it's probably a development dependency, not something else. But anyway, I had fun with it. I tried it out. I do like it's not a whole bunch of rules. The rules are like project should not contain missing dependencies, should not contain unused dependencies, should not use transitive dependencies. That's interesting. Yeah, I kind of agree. You don't depend on if something's getting imported or installed because you installed something else. That third-party package might refactor and not include that. So yeah, you should probably transitive. Anyway, I think a fun project, and yeah, I'm gonna check it out a little bit more.
Very cool. Henry out there says those tests and doc dependencies should be dependency groups nowadays.
Okay.
I appreciate that. I don't do nuanced stuff enough to know. So yes, thanks, Henry.
Thanks for that homework, Henry.
Yes, exactly. Thanks for the homework, man. So you know what, I could find myself on a server or just the terminal, and I'm trying to figure out why are some of my dependencies missing? Where are my files even? What's going on, Brian? And I came across this thing called Jefton Browser. Drop the E. So it's a little bit too Web 2.0-y, but it still has the O, so I don't really know what that means. Anyway, what it is this is a really neat tool that is basically an interactive keyboard driven and mouse driven experience, like a Finder or Windows Explorer, but for your terminal, and works over SSH. So if I SSH into a server, I could say browser in a folder, and it gives me a tree of all the folders. I can arrow through them, I can click through them, and then expand. And when you click on them, it will show on the right the file, and on the left the tree of the area starting from where you ran it and down. Isn't that cool?
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it has basically the viewing for the files. It has context highlighting. You can even show images and a couple other things like that. So really neat. And I think if you're doing anything super terminal based, I know you can run it on your local machine, but I don't know. Here's a little tip for people who don't know. If you're in a folder on Mac OS, you can type open space dot, and that will just bring up Finder there. In Windows, you can say start space dot, and it will open up Windows Explorer focused in that folder. So if you're in the terminal, you want like a browser, like a GUI like thing, you're pretty close. You're pretty close to having it. You got to type browser anyway if you want to get this thing to start. But if you're on an SSH connection to a server, well, there is no alternative but to just LS your way through. And this is a really nice way to just kind of flip through and explore what is in here. And as you move through the files, it displays them with syntax highlighting. I like it. I think it's super, super useful. It's going to be part of my server maintenance toolkit, I think is what I will say.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm also one to possibly just use open dot for that, but also or just cheat and just say code space dot and open VS Code and have the tree directory. I think the O is necessary in the name so that it's bro. So bros are maybe
bro. Fair. All right, yeah. And if you don't, it's not on the GitHub, I don't think. But if you click their domain, which is effectively like a read the docs type of thing, you can actually see it in action with a little animated screen recording. A little silent.
We love animated screen recording.
Yes, so nice. So
cool.
All right, what do you got? Extras?
I just have a show and tell extra because I went to an estate sale a couple weeks ago, and I got a fun gift or a fun little thing that I just that I picked up, and so I was going to show it off, show and tell. I got this book called Micro, Understanding the Micro, and it's microcomputers, what they can, how they work, and what they can do. And I flipped. It's sort of fun. It's got like, it's for kids and stuff. But the in the back there's a buyer's guide, and I flipped back and I'm like, well, does it have mine? And yeah, sure enough, the TRS-80 color computer. That was what I started.
Ooh, okay.
Fun
Very
little
nice.
book, and I haven't read much of it yet though, but it should be fun. It even talks about basic programming and stuff like that. It's fun.
Nice. You see, Brian, I was definitely later in the computer hardware game. My brother had a Commodore 64, but I saved up when I was in high school and I got myself a 486 DX, not the SX, but the one with the floating point processor and 33 megahertz. That's where I started off.
I think that's close to what I had. I think I must have been ahead of you a little bit, because I bought a 486 IBM 46 when I was in college, so I could do homework on it.
Yeah,
and I think the first thing I bought was Turbo Pascal for it.
Nice. I think the first thing I got was Mech Warriors. Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, there's a whole bunch of stories from that era, but let's go back to this era. And I just want to say, since you gave the recommendation of John Papa's Peacock, I've been playing with it. It is so good.
It's fun, right?
It is really, really useful. And what I didn't realize, the way it works is if you're in something like Cursor or VS Code or whatever, and you have to create a workspace, not just open a directory. But once you create the workspace, it embeds your styling for that project into the workspace file. So it syncs across machines naturally by just doing git push, git pull.
Oh,
and so, yeah, it's a little bit extra like that. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, I just want to give a shout out to the follow up to that, I suppose. That was awesome. Still is.
Cool. I guess do you have more extras?
No, I'm without further extras.
I had one that I kind of forgot to say. I am still working on the Lean TDD book, and I'm almost done with the building on test-driven development chapter. So finally, with a book like TDD in the name, I finally talk about TDD in it. I haven't released that yet, but I'm hoping to release that later today or maybe tomorrow.
Oh, very cool. Awesome. I love it.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's great. I love the idea. And Brutus out there says, Peacock is awesome. I used it since last week when you talked about it, Brian. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I do too. All right, let's do our joke. So, people have threats. They can be empty threats or scary threats. Like, I'm going to tell the world about this thing that you did weird, or I'm going to find you, I'm going to punch you in the gut, or whatever. But that's not a very common thing that programmers do. Now, programmers have a different version. Okay. I will find you, and I will install Linux on your computer.
Yeah, that's extreme. Yeah.
That's you've messed up when someone gets over and you're like, Fedora, all right, who did this? What is this? Reminds me of I'm having the BIOS flavor of the slushies or the frozen yogurt or whatever. Pretty good.
I will downvote your Hacker News article. No.
Oh yeah, exactly. I will definitely downvote your Hacker News article. Or this also reminds me of some of the jokes people used to play. Oh my goodness. What, especially with Windows, if you could change the background image.
Oh yeah. The blue screen of death.
Change the background image to the blue screen of death. Or I know when Vista came out, people were super do not put this on my computer, and the IT people were installing it. And I know someone who took a screenshot of Vista, put it onto someone else's computer, and then in tasked their Explorer or something like that. And so they didn't have any,
Oh, that's funny.
they had no thing overlaying it. So it just like, no, they did it. And they're like, click on, like, I told you it wouldn't work. Nothing even clicks here. Yeah. I will find you and do stuff. Your computer's pretty fun. But this one is I will find you and install Linux in your computer.
That's funny. Yeah, be careful whose child you abduct. So.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not actually going to go install Linux on anyone's computers other than potentially mine. So no threats here.
Yeah.
Although Henry does point out that these days, maybe the opposite is more threatening. I'll find you and I'll install Windows 11 on your computer. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of bad ideas showing up in chat. We're not going to share. Yeah. No, they're great though. Made me laugh.
No,
all right.
Good.
Thank you, everyone. See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.